I'm Jenna Riemersma, Clinical Director of the Atlanta Center for Relational Healing. I'm also a teaching faculty member with ITAP's PSAT program, and I'm excited to chat a little bit with you about internal family systems, which is a new model of understanding human behavior that we are finding to be very efficacious in our client work, as well as helpful for us as clinicians in how we relate to ourselves, care for our clients, and relate to others. IFS was developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz about 30 years ago when he sort of set aside his knowing parts and began to really be present with curiosity and listen to his clients. And what he discovered was that his clients repeatedly began to share different parts of themselves. And what he noticed over time was that different parts that people were describing were at war with one another, and those polarizations in people's internal experience was in fact what was causing much of their dilemmas. And he began to formulate a model of understanding human experience in multiplicity, as opposed to the image of us as monolithic human beings. In other words, we are not an entity, but it is normative to have many different parts. And what he discovered when he interacted with these parts in a compassionate and curious way was that the parts would actually relax and be appreciative of someone extending some interest and curiosity towards them. And he discovered, in fact, a pivotal piece of information, which is that all parts of every human were good. All parts were good. They were not all doing good things in the ways that they were coping, but they had good intentions. And this is a game changer because many of us in our clinical work with parts of our clients that are coping in unhelpful ways. So our clients who are dealing with sexual acting out behavior, for example, have a part that is trying very diligently to help with an issue of pain or trauma in a way that is involving sexual acting out. And that the most effective way to help that part unburden, to use IFS language, is to actually move toward it with curiosity, to welcome it and hear what's going on for it and why it is coping in the way that it is. And what Dick discovered was that behind these parts that were coping in unhelpful ways were always more vulnerable, tender parts that he called exiles. And those exiles are the parts of each of us that hold and carry our trauma. And they are frozen in time at the period in the person's life when the trauma occurred. And so very often, these exiles are very young, and they carry the negative emotions and core trauma messages that are really at the heart of healing in our clinical work. Things like shame, fear, anxiety, and core beliefs such as, I'm worthless, my feelings and needs don't matter, I will never measure up, no one will be there for me. And what Dick found was that those exiles desperately needed healing, unburdening, to use IFS language, and that the solution for that unburdening did not lie outside of the individual, but rather inside, at the very core of who they were, of who you are and who I am. And he called that core the self. And it is the self in its very deepest essence that carries the qualities that are essential for healing. Self embodies, when it is fully accessed, what he called the 8 C's. And those are qualities that are such as courage, clear-mindedness, connectedness, curiosity, compassion, creativity, all of these attributes that in many different spiritual traditions are very familiar to our clients of faith and to various religious traditions. This is alternatively referred to as flow or as the God image within us. Many different religious traditions identify and connect with this experience of a deep core self. And Dick asserted, based on his experience with interviewing his clients, that when all the parts of the client felt heard and safe and able to unblend, this self emerged spontaneously. And when it did, and when the client connected with the essence of their core self, these 8 C's spontaneously emerged. And it was in this state of self that healing of these burdened exiles and even these burdened protectors was possible, to create and free up these parts to engage in the internal system in a much more helpful, dynamic, and peaceable way. So a burdened part that might carry terror from a history of abuse, for example, might be freed up in an unburdening to bring its playful, spontaneous nature to the person's life and internal system. And so began this discovery of human functioning that is actually quite profound. And if you are like me, fairly radically different from the ways that we typically engage culturally and socially with the parts of ourselves and others that we don't like and that we wish would stop doing the unhelpful or irritating things that they are doing. This is different than how we tend to church in our faith communities sometimes with these parts that feel undesirable. And this is different than sometimes how we do therapy as well. Very often in our social and cultural and therapeutic and faith-based communities, we have a variously worded approach of moving against the parts of ourselves and of others that we don't prefer. So for example, if I experience a situation that reminds me of an early childhood trauma, I might have an exile flood me and I might feel a great deal of shame. Most of us have an intolerance for the flooding sensation of shame, and so we might take a drink, call a friend, act out, surf the web, get on Facebook, go shopping, do a variety of things to try to push that shame away and lock it in the basement, kick it out so that we don't have to deal with it. And we do this in a variety of different ways. In complete contrast, IFS invites us to welcome that shame, to embrace it as we would an external part, an external person who is carrying shame and pain, to embrace it, to be present with it in that self-energy that is so profoundly healing, to witness that exile. In other words, allow that exiled part to reveal, whether through memories or through the impression of words or language, the trauma that this part of the individual experienced so that it might not feel alone and trapped. And a process then engages of retrieval and unburdening that's beyond the scope of this video, but that is incredibly profound. And what happens is internally, this powerful shifting occurs, not by moving against or moving away, but in fact by moving toward. And so begins this incredible dynamic wherein we can begin to embrace the parts of ourselves and the parts of our clients and our beloved and our neighbor and our child and our mother-in-law and our parents that really are evocative for us, and understand that they are in likelihood burdened parts that are trying to help with pain, which gives us an autonomic regulatory distancing from that and a beautiful sense of spaciousness wherein we can have more access to grace within us for those difficult parts of others. And for the dangerous parts of others, it gives us that clear-mindedness where we are able to set healthy boundaries in a new way. Again, not in a moving against, but in a wise and a clear-minded and a gracious, compassionate way. So this model is incredibly transformative. It is a game changer. It's very simple in its essence. There's self, there are protector parts, and there are exiles. But the complexity of it is quite beautiful. And if you are electrified by this concept, as I have been, I would invite you to come and learn more. There is a desperate need for IFS-trained therapists because the demand is growing way beyond what our resources are in the IFS community. So I would invite you to go to the IFS website, which is selfleadership.org, and click on the trainings link. And in there, you can explore all of the variety of options available to you as a clinician to become IFS trained and to join our family of IFS therapists. I would also invite you to check out my website, the Atlanta Center for Relational Healing.com, or if that's too many keys to type, just acfrh.com. And there you will find lots of information. You can connect with me. I come to various organizations around the country and do 1- and 2-day workshops for churches, for private practices, for residential treatment centers to help to equip staff to know how to integrate the principles of internal family systems into their work, whether it be in a faith-based setting or in a clinical setting. I also provide professional consultation over the phone or by Skype, and so if you are interested in integrating IFS work into your practice and would like some consultation in that, I do provide those services. And I also have a book that is in the process of publication with Random House Publishers on IFS and spirituality that will be coming out in press soon. So I look forward to releasing that and connecting with you around that topic. So thank you so much for joining me today in this exciting conversation about internal family systems and the radical game changer that it is. I look forward to connecting with you soon.